Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Cyber Vigilance podcast. So, in today's episode, we're going to be talking about all things continuous validation, pen testing, what's happened in the past, where we're going in the future. And I thought it was only right if we did this with one of our newest partners at Cyber Vigilance, which is Horizon 3. So, very exciting to announce that all of our customers can now have access to their solutions. And today, we'll be talking through what they can do and how you should be looking into different ways to test your environment and making sure that you know what your risks are. So with that, I'm going to introduce you to today's guest, which is AJ from Horizon 3.
Hi, good morning, Katie. How are
All
you?
good, yeah. Thank you very much for joining me today. I know we've known each other for a while now, and really excited to have you on here because I think you've got some great insights to share with us. Thank you very much for joining
Yeah,
me.
it's great to be here.
Great. So it would be nice, AJ, if you could just give us an intro to yourself and perhaps the journey with Horizon 3 and maybe give us some insight into some of the key philosophy and principles behind the solution.
Yeah, sure. I think probably the best place to start would just be a quick intro to myself, and then I'll jump into, I suppose, the principles and the philosophy of Horizon 3. That will obviously give some context as to where we came from and why we have the philosophy that we do. So obviously you know me, Katie. So my name is AJ Nurcombe. I'm the senior systems engineer for North Europe at Horizon 3. So I cover off everything technical for the countries with bad weather in Europe. But my background is I've been in systems engineering for over 10 years, 10, 15 years. Prior to that in working in the channel as professional services and post sales. So I've got good understanding of the technical journey when it comes to working with customers and worked on the end user side as well. So yeah, I mean, in terms of the Horizon 3 journey, I think, like I say, if I cover off our background, that'll give us some great context to our philosophy. So the company itself was founded in 2019 by two gentlemen. One is Snehal and Tony, who is our CEO, and also Tony Pilater, otherwise known as Tony P, who is our CTO. And they came or met each other at an organization known as JSOC, which is the Joint Special Operations in the US. So Snehal actually came from a private sector background. He has held roles as CIO and CTO for a variety of different companies like GE Capital, as well as Splunk. And Tony was a lifelong JSOC member. Now, when they met each other in Joint Special Operations, they had a whole host of problems that they faced, like pretty much every other business that we see out there in the market, which is really, how do you prioritize what is important, whether that be from a risk perspective or whether that be from a patching perspective, or what tools to buy, where to spend budget. And specifically at JSOC, it was really around, vulnerability scanning programs. You're getting a lot of signal, but you're also getting a lot of noise. And how do you prioritize what to fix and how quickly to fix it? So once they both left JSOC, they came up with the idea of autonomous pen testing, or creating an autonomous pen testing company. And really the goal of that, which was which was Horizon 3, is to be able to actively exploit an organization within production, so you can get a true understanding of your exploitable attack surface, whether that be publicly facing or internally in the cloud. And really what that does is it gives you true signal as to where are the risks and what to do to fix those risks. And whether that be something from a tooling perspective, or buying a new product, or getting in new engineers or professional services, it's really about being able to truly understand what to rank order or what to prioritize. And that was really the birth of Horizon 3. So our philosophy fundamentally is that we believe that we should take the attacker's perspective and we should use offensive cyber to inform defensive cyber, and then ultimately use defensive cyber to inform offensive cyber. So it's that kind of continuous loop. Some people refer to it as purple teaming as an example, but really that's our goal, is to use offensive to inform defense.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great overview there. And from Cyber Vigilance's perspective, one of the reasons that we partnered with Horizon 3 is being able to flip the mindset. So, yeah, exactly like you said, looking at the attacker's perspective. And a lot of what we do as an organisation is around that defensive side of things. But you've got to be able to test and validate that. And realistically, a business's risk can be completely different to another business. So yeah, we might all have the exact same policies and controls in place, but how do we know that they're actually effective against the risks that that particular business is facing? And I think for us, as well, the pedigree of your founders and really understanding what that problem is one of the key reasons why we wanted to partner with you, because it kind of fills that gap with what we were offering our customers. Yes, we can defend you against all of these things, but how do you actually know whether they're the right solutions and services you should be putting in place? So I think there's a lot that can come from Horizon 3, being able to protect businesses moving forward, because as we know in cyber, it's not one size fits all. Everyone is different. So yeah, really enjoyed listening to kind of the journey to how Horizon 3 came to be and the problems that you're solving. So yeah, thank you very much for that. So starting off this podcast, I know I mentioned earlier within cyber vigilance, we do a lot around the defensive side of things. And again, in this podcast series, so far we've talked about the defenses that you should be putting in place, EDR, XDR, email security, all these kind of things. But this episode is a bit different because we'll be talking about the attacker's perspective and how we're able to look at what our risks are and prioritize that. So I think it's only fitting to kind of look at the past and how organizations have been able to look at those risks previously. So I think starting off, it'd be great to kind of get your perspective on what do you think the main problems are with how businesses tackle validation currently or in the past in general?
Yeah, sure. That's that's a very broad question, and that is a talking point that we could talk about for hours. But I suppose based on the organisations that I've worked with whilst I've been here at Horizon 3, there's probably 3 or 4 main areas that come up when it comes to the issues of validation. So first and foremost, you've got your pen testing, your traditional manual pen testing. And we can talk about that in a bit more detail in a moment. But fundamentally, other than doing pen testing or maybe a tabletop exercise potentially once a year, how do you validate your security tool stack is doing what it claims to do? And that's really the only time that is truly validated is at a breach. And that's where no organization wants to be, is, okay, we know something isn't working because something has been circumvented, people have got in, or there's an insider threat, whatever that may be. We don't want to, and we want to avoid using breaches as a way to validate what has happened or what is working and what is not working. So aside from that, I think the first thing is organizations struggle with prioritization, especially with modern day security tooling. You get a whole host of signal, and that is really, really good. You've got as you mentioned before, your detection and response tools, whether that be EDR or NDR, XDR. You've got your logging that you could take into a SIM as an example. But how do you know that you're getting the right alerts or it's capturing what it says it's capturing? So we talk about this from an attacker's perspective. Threat actors are now using machine learning, and they're using ultimately machine speed in their campaigns. And therefore the tooling is doing the same. So we have a whole host of tooling out there that is using machine speed to defend. That as an organization, as a human, is hard to validate. So that's the first thing is tools validation. If you're pen testing using machine learning and you're using similar techniques and tools that a threat actor would do, you can now start to truly validate that your EDR is capturing, let's say as an example, what it says it's capturing, or it's missing it. And therefore tuning needs to happen, or being able to actually prioritize and understand the tools that you have in place, how effectively they are working, and doing this on a continuous basis, and then tuning them accordingly to your environment. Because as you mentioned, Katie, no organization is the same, and therefore generic tools that do the same for everybody simply isn't good enough. Tuning to the environment is always going to be absolutely crucial. So the way to tune, whether that be your logging or your tooling, is going to be by penetration testing. Now, the issue that comes with that is that outside of what we do, which is autonomous pen testing, your option really is manual pen testing or tabletop exercises. You could potentially do some breach and attack simulation, but ultimately that's a simulation. So the key thing here is that let's say you do a manual pen test. Most people can really only afford to do one a year. You have a huge window of potentially 9 months. You do your manual pen test, you get your outcomes, and you've got a huge window to not only fix those outcomes and check. You may not necessarily know that they've been fixed or they've been validated, those fixes, until that time next year. And in cyber, as you well know, 10, 11 months is a very, very long time. So this is where moving from, not necessarily moving from, but augmenting your manual pen testing with continuous security validation, let's say via autonomous pen testing, is crucial, because you're reducing that window. You're able to find, fix, and verify very, very quickly, and therefore you're reducing your risk ultimately over time. So that's the I suppose the key thing is prioritization, and the way that you prioritize is to validate as often as you possibly can in a variety of different manners. There are a couple of other ones that crop up. So typically, if people are doing manual pen testing, sometimes it's just through necessary reasons for compliance, and it's a compliance checkbox exercise. And again, I think moving that mindset away from I just need to do pen tests for compliance to, again, taking that attacker's perspective. Because if you think about it, when you are working in an organization, you have a whole set of biases and assumptions to the environment. We see this all the time. As a great example is I don't know if you've seen the video where there's a lot of people on stage. I think they're juggling or something like that, and then the gorilla walks through, and they ask the audience at the end who saw the gorilla, and hardly anyone actually sees it, because you're so focused on what is potentially important to you that you actually miss the gorilla in the room. And that is a perspective that a threat actor will never take. If they get into your environment and you assume breach, they are going to assume they know nothing about what is happening internally. And therefore, they will always assume they don't know, and they will then go and look. Whereas if you're a security analyst or you're a CISO, whatever role you have a whole set of common understanding and assumptions of what that organization is like and where you think you may be safe or not. So again, trying to change and shift the mindset to always assuming that you don't know, assuming breach, and actively pen testing, then that, I think that is probably one of the most critical things any organization can do when it comes to validation, is that shift in mindset.
Yeah, I think there's a few points that you raised there that are really important to this. Firstly, around when you mentioned about things in cyber change so frequently, it's like as soon as you do that pen test, the next day it's almost irrelevant, because there could be a completely new vulnerability, 0 day, new vector that people are going after. So it's being able to understand in real time?
Yeah, sure. There's a couple of points there to unpack. So I think if we talk about the CVE piece first, so there's a the likes of vulnerability scanning as a program and as a tool set has been around for a long, long time. And you're absolutely right. There is a huge CVE database, and really only a very small percentage, like you say, 4%, are actively exploitable in the wild. So yes, it's great to understand all of the CVEs across your infrastructure, but it comes back to that prioritization point is, are you're getting good signal, but you're also getting a whole host of noise. And that is a real problem that we see within cyber as a whole. So yeah, going back to what to actually patch. So pen testing, or in our case, autonomous pen testing, is a great way to do that. Because yes, we will find what is actively exploitable in your environment, but also the chain to potentially get to that CVE. Because yes, you could patch. You may have to wait for a change control window or another team, whatever that may be. However, if there were very small pieces of business hygiene that could happen prior to that in the chain, like we see it all the time, what's known as SMB signing not required, a small group policy change could actually completely stop that CVE from being potentially exploited. So again, getting that true signal and understanding of the attack chains within the attack paths within your environment means that yes, you should absolutely patch that CVE, but there may be quicker fixes. And in cyber, going from the finding, what we call the find, fix, verify loop, finding to fixing to then verifying that fix is in place, the smaller you can make that window, the safer you would be as an organization. And that also talks to your point on 0 days. As an organization, we have a very comprehensive labs and exploit team, and we always look for emergent end days that are coming out and get them into the product so customers can rapidly test their entire environment. Are they subject to that potential end day? And if they are, what are the steps to be able to exploit that in their environment? And then get the fix actions out to them and then rerun the test to verify that that's been fixed. So you can actually significantly shorten that window. And that's really, again, the other kind of point that I wanted to touch on for any organization is the finding everyone finds interesting, but the fixing and the verifying is absolutely the more important. And most importantly is doing that in a short period of time. So any tooling that will allow you to shorten that window is going to provide huge benefit. So that's the kind of first point.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned, as I said previously as well, that only certain CVEs are exploitable in the wild. We as an organization, and I also recommend to businesses to look at not just the full CVE database, but there's something known as the CISA KEV list, the known exploitable vulnerability list. And that really details all CVEs that either are exploitable in the wild or have publicly available POCs. And that will at least allow you to rank order and prioritize what is important. If you don't have that visibility of your attack paths, at least you can start to try and prioritize what CVEs to patch based on that list. But like I say, there are other techniques, misconfigurations, weak passwords. Someone with a weak password, why do you need to build huge walls on the castle if someone can just get the key to walk straight in through the front door? So there are other things like misconfigurations and weak passwords and hygiene that can also be dealt with as a way of shortening that window.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great way to view it because, like we said about traditional pen testings, you know what the findings are. But looking at that whole attack chain, and it's interesting you mentioned about, well, maybe necessarily if it's CV and you need to patch it, what else could you have done in that meantime to reduce that risk in such a short time frame? And I think a lot of people focus just on that patching element and not, well, actually, if we did a policy change here, it wouldn't actually affect us and those kind of things. So yeah, I think that's a really interesting point that a lot of people maybe wouldn't think of. And interesting you mentioned around the credentials as well, because credential usage and attacks via weak passwords are the top attack vector now. So understanding what happens if someone was able to get in through a weak password, what do they have access to, rather than just concentrating on those CVEs. It's all the other elements within your environment that people can attack and get through. So, and it all comes back to the attacker's mindset. What's the quickest way for them to get in and get what they need out of it, right? In a previous podcast, we were talking about everyone focuses on these like really highly technical attacks, but in reality, a lot of them are quite simple. And you spend so much time focusing on the really technical things when you just need to take a step back and be, actually, what's the easiest way for someone to get into our environment? It might not be for a really technical 0 day or something like that. It could just be through email or finding someone's password. So I think they're all really good points.
I was going to say, this is why things like cyber essentials training and phishing campaigns are so important. So the first line and the last line of defense ultimately is the people in your organization. The issue with the likes of phishing campaigns, though, is yes, it will tell you who is clicking on links and how they're harvesting credentials, but then you need some type of tooling that will provide context to what that means to your business. Because if it is someone with very low privileges, yes, you've got their credentials, but like you say, does that mean, what does that mean? Whereas if I got potentially a C-suite set of credentials, is that going to give me, or an administrator set of credentials, is that going to give me full domain compromise? So being able to provide context, which is also something that autonomous pen testing is great at, is providing context to the existing tooling stack. To say, well, this is the alerts and this is the information that I'm getting. These are the users that are being phished. And then the context of that is this is leading to brand compromise or ransomware exposure or what is the active impact to the business itself. I was going to say, this is why things like cyber essentials training and phishing campaigns are so important. So the first line and the last line of defense ultimately is the people in your organization. The issue with the likes of phishing campaigns, though, is yes, it will tell you who is clicking on links and how they're harvesting credentials, but then you need some type of tooling that will provide context to what that means to your business. Because if it is someone with very low privileges, yes, you've got their credentials, but like you say, does that mean, what does that mean? Whereas if I got potentially a C-suite set of credentials, is that going to give me, or an administrator set of credentials, is that going to give me full domain compromise? So being able to provide context, which is also something that autonomous pen testing is great at, is providing context to the existing tooling stack. To say, well, this is the alerts and this is the information that I'm getting. These are the users that are being phished. And then the context of that is this is leading to brand compromise or ransomware exposure or what is the active impact to the business itself?
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think just to kind of come back to the beginning and talk about what the main points here that we've raised just before we finish up this podcast is looking at, mindset shift is a big one. Looking from the attacker's perspective, I think that's integral to this element within cyber. If you're implementing a strategy where you're looking to validate and look at your risks, looking at attackers' mindset, because you think in almost every other industry, like if you're in sales, you'd try to look at it from a customer's perspective, or just every other industry looks at something from a different perspective, and we often don't do that in cyber. So I think that's really important. And again, all comes back to visibility. You can't protect unless you know where your gaps are, where your risks are. And this is something I always talk about in the podcast, is visibility, because I think it's the most important part of cybersecurity at the moment. So yeah, I think all the points you've raised are really important to any business. So I think I just wanted to end this with looking at, obviously we've talked about the past, what we can do at the moment, what do you think is coming in the future when we're looking at autonomous validation and pen testing?
Yes, that's a good question. It kind of goes to the point that I mentioned at the beginning. So first thing, which I think is clear to everyone in the industry, is that threat actors now are using algorithms to achieve their outcomes. So threat actors are working at machine speed, and therefore tooling needs to do the same. It needs to work at machine speed. And we saw that with the EDR market uh, with ML within EDR. We see it in a whole host of detection and response products where we're having to leverage now machine learning to keep pace with what's happening on the offensive side. That's also what we're now seeing in pen testing. So not to say that autonomous pen testing will replace manual pen testing. Absolutely not. Really, what we're trying to achieve is to work at machine speed so you can pen test infrastructure broadly. So even if you have 250,000 IP addresses, you can use machine learning to pen test all of that and understand your exploitable attack surface. What that frees up is your red teamers and your pen testers to do far more bespoke work, which is primarily application level testing, pen testing your bespoke apps. So that's the goal really of autonomous pen testing is one, to free up that time of the manual pen tests to do stuff that only humans, can do. And then also, taking pen testing to that machine speed. So working at the pace of a machine rather than working at the pace of a human. In terms of the company itself and looking to the future, I won't go through it now in the interest of time, but our full vision and strategy is published on our website at horizon3.ai. And we do have a highly defined strategy over the next 5 years plus. And really, it's all focused around that offensive cyber to inform defensive, to allow defensive to inform offensive. So with that, we are releasing a whole host of new products and functionality. I can't talk about it here, but we love to make big announcements at large events like Black Hat. So Black Hat's just around the corner. So what I'll leave it with is watch this space with some of the stuff that we have coming out. But if anyone's interested in understanding our full strategy and vision, it's all available on our website.
Amazing. Thank you so much, AJ, for joining me on this podcast and giving your insights into the market and Horizon 3. I think it's really interesting what you guys are doing. And obviously there's a lot more to come, which we'll see from Black Hat and in the future. So thank you very much for joining me.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to be here and good to see you again, Katie.
Yeah, great to see you. So thank you everyone for listening. If you're interested in finding out more about Horizon 3, I'll make sure that all the details are in the description of this podcast, or you can reach out to anyone at the Cyber Vigilance team or the Horizon 3 team. And thank you very much for listening, everyone. And I'll catch you on the next one.